Okay, thank you very much for various comments and questions that you made. And it's really stimulating to me. And sometimes some questions sounds really awkward, but it's really good. I've never thought about it. And just let me think and let me study more. It's really good for me too. And I'm not only teaching, but I'm also learning from you guys too. I think I told you about that before. And some of you mentioned that those figurines, clay-made human figurines, dogu ですね, dogu, made kind of crudely. They're not in refined design or finish. And other of you have mentioned that all the dogus figurines are made in symmetry. 左右対称ね, symmetry. Although we've gone through all the pottery designs, which is not symmetry, asymmetry でしたね. And what's the difference? And of course, the designs on the pottery surface describes the some thoughts, of course, beliefs or thoughts or ideas of Jomon people. We do not know the detail about it, what exactly they mean, but we have kind of idea that they have their vision of the world, which is not the reality, but the really conceptual area, and they try to express their vision of the world in abstract manner, 抽象的な形でね, abstract manner. And that's what we mostly see on the Jomon pottery. But figurine designs are different, Then they're not expressing their vision of the world or anything, but probably they're making figurine for the ceremonial purposes, probably related to the giving birth to the babies, pregnant woman, And then that's the reality. That's not the idea or concept. That's a reality, sheer reality, to descend your life, your DNA to your children and grandchildren and so on. So the purpose is different. The design of a figurine, the design of pottery, the purposes are different totally. And they try to be more real on figurine, but they're not good at reproducing the reality, I think. That's very strange. Sounds funny, but they're really good at expressing the abstract designs, especially on pottery, but not really on figurines. Of course, some of those some of those figurines are really well made, but like this one, it looks as if kids made it. It's not really refined finishing, and the form, style, and decoration, and kind of crude. So that was not their major thing. It's different from pottery. They wanted to reproduce the reality of the pregnant woman. This is more real, right? And this is better made, I think. And this is really stylized. They didn't care about the reality too much, but it's a lot more real than pottery designs. And this is finely made, finely finished, very well made, but still stylized. So I think they're not really good at, or they didn't want to produce anything real, you know, like this one. It's so stylized, doesn't look like a human. This is real sometimes, but the real things are rare, very rare. ですね、珍しいね。See, so well finished, well made, but stylized. You see, and so much elements in mystery, still in mystery, about the figurines function and decoration and styles, and you know, and many of these seem to have like as if wearing a mask, not the real face, but wearing a mask. You know, the open, just open, round mouth, open eyes. Maybe this one too. And this is more real, but have strange eyes, you know, slanted eyes and open mouth. It even doesn't have a face. And this one too, you see, it looks like a face, but you know, those absent-minded kind of face is probably a mask. This is a flat expression. It's like a board, and looks as if he's or she's wearing a mask. And many people point out that in this too, the flat face. I don't know about this one, these one. Well, this is not. You know, this could be a mask too. So in the I'll show you the real mask like this. You see, this is just a mask. It's big. It's over 20 centimeter more than that. So you can wear it. You know, it has a face and head. So it's like a cap. You know, you can cover the head and face with this. And so we're not too sure, but some of them look like wearing a mask. So maybe there could have been some kind of ceremonies or ritual services where some of those shamans or very special designated people would wear a mask in that ceremony and do something, you know. And there are so many examples. I mean, ethnologic examples, anthropological examples that in ceremony they wear masks and they would wear special garments, special clothes or uniform or whatever, and wear various kinds of masks. And sometimes you would not wear any mask, but you paint the face so that you will be the different being from yourself. You know, maybe a spirit or something, you know, that's unusual things that appears in ceremony. So in that sense, figurines maybe some of the figurines may be wearing masks too. Somebody's microphone on. I can't hear you. Please turn the microphone off. Okay, right. And so on. You know, so it's really.
Mari mute じゃないんです。
Excuse me. What did you say?
Oh, Mari's mic is still on. That's all.
Yeah.
English.
Okay, thank you. All right. So that's one thing that I thought I should add to it. You know, not very much I can talk about the figurines, but still. And also, yeah, I should talk about the posts, wooden posts. Yeah, this one. I mentioned about this special structures probably related to the seasonal calendar, like this, you know, this astronomical elements like sunset, sunrise of a particular time of the year, describing the season, the change or border of the season, where they could perform various kinds of ceremony or ritual. But at the same time, why they had to make it so big? You know, one of the reasons I mentioned was they had to gather around. Many people needed to be gathered around and do the same work, a big work that requires a lot of people, a lot of hands. And so they could unite their concept of the world, their concept of whatever that holds their society. And that's one of the functions of doing this kind of work, big work. And I don't have the picture, but there are various type of construction works they made, big size construction. Like some of them are a big mound, like a donut shape mound, huge mound, like over 45, 50 meters diameter that sometimes surrounds the settlement or by the settlement, where they made the burial grounds, you know, cemetery, bochi desu ne, with the mound, and so on. So there are various forms that they could take, but there were always some kind of big work that required many hands from the late Jomon period, maybe the latter half of middle Jomon period, the latter half of Jomon period, where the climate and the environmental condition declined and the population declined as well. So that was a time they really needed to be gathered around sometimes, occasionally, and do the same work at the same time, all together, you know. And also, that's one of the reasons why they wanted to make it big, probably. But the other thing is that why they have to erect this huge pole, huge column, you know. And that's another thing that I have to explain, I think. Well, we don't know. I can't really explain it about it, but there should be some reasons, because there are various type of those. This one too. This is kind of short. The reproduction is short, but should have been longer than that, higher than that. So, and this is one hint, one evidence that may suggest about this erecting high pole towards the sky, towards the heaven. This is a shrine, reproduction of the ancient shrine of Izumo, a great shrine of Izumo, literally great or big shrine of Izumo, Izumo Taisha desu ne. And it's located on the northern coastal side of Western Japan, Shimane Prefecture, by Japan seaside. And it's still there. And this shrine is supposed to be the center of the entire shrine of Japan, the major, heart of the shrines. And supposed to be the original shrine, the first shrine that ever made in Japan. And they still, this shrine is still there, but not in this shape. This is a model that this shrine used to be in oral tradition and some of the written records. They used to have this high raised shrine. And about a decade ago, a little more than that, but recently they have made some excavations around that shrine and found the foundation, the base of this column right below the shrine. And these huge wood were bundled in three poles. Three huge poles were bundled in one, yeah. And that formed one column for the shrine. So there should be more than that. And so we now know that they used to have this kind of huge raised shrine at the time. And the reason why they made this shrine so high, well, according to the record, they described that this shrine was above the cloud. You can't see it from ground, it's so high. It's in the cloud or above the cloud. And it's supposed to be the house of the gods, Japanese traditional gods, multiple gods of Shintoism. Shinto is our traditional early religion. And according to the tradition, the gods live in heaven, and they sometimes come down to the surface to control, not control, but watch over the people, the nation. And this was the tentative house of the gods when they come down. It's attached to the ground. So this is the surface structure. It's not the god's house, but it was a god's mansion. The gods tentatively lived there when they come down. So this high elevation of the house or shrine means that it's closer to the heaven. And you see, there are three worlds that human beings could not reach. One is heaven, one is sky, and another is underground. You cannot live underground unless you make hole or tunnel or something. You normally don't not be able to live underground. That's hell, another world, dead's world. And the third one is in the water, especially in the ocean. You cannot live there. That's the word for other kind of creatures like fish and others, So they must have had very specific thoughts, concepts about those different world, so to say, different world, up in the sky, down in the ground, and in the water. And this is one of those. Up in the sky, probably they imagined of those heavens, so to say. Well, they didn't say it's heaven. Takamagahara is the name of heaven in traditional Japanese religion, and where gods all live together. And that was a concept in the later historic period. And there are other concepts like that in all over the world. The format is maybe different. It's not exactly the same, but they all, human beings all thought of the sky where they never be able to reach. So they all had specific thoughts and concepts probably. And that's why they made all kinds of structures that's raised. This is famous Stonehenge of England. And these stones are huge, they're a tourist group right here. And you can tell how high those stones are. And so many of those. Not all of them are reconstructed now, but they used to be all down, but they reconstructed what they could. And they also have this huge stone, upright stone right here. They call it heel stone, kakato is heel stone. And the heel stone and this stone circle acted like, just like the one you saw in Aomori Prefecture. You see, this is a summer solstice sunset. The sunset goes right down above the heel stone. So, you know, they must have had this kind of astronomical system related to various ceremonies. And for that, you know, they spent so much time and effort, labor to create this kind of structures. And it's not only for calendar, of course, they had to maintain their society sometimes with this kind of huge work, huge labor in the prehistoric time. It's anywhere. It's in France. Karnak shows alignment, a lineament of huge stones. These stones are so big, you know, one of these over 5 meters high. And hundreds and thousands of those aligned in certain direction, and mostly east-west direction. They were aligned, so it must be related to sunset of certain time of the year. There are several directions in. They're not all the same direction. Those rows of stones are different, so they must have their own system to do some kind of ceremonies related to the seasonal change, I suppose. And sometimes single stones like this is like over 15 meters, I guess, a huge one in France. And there are so many of these all around the world in the prehistoric time, not the historic ones like you see in Egypt or other parts, but not the pyramid time. But before that, you know, they still did this kind of huge work. I don't know how many people had to work just to raise up and erect this kind of stone. But, you know, they thought of probably the same kind of things. They're always they're always trying to point the heaven, you know, upright. So probably that's one thing really important when we come to think about our structure here, you know. And there is another evidence in Japan, which is this onbashira. Onbashira literally means post, just post. In Suwa Shrine in Nagano Prefecture, they still do this today. And in the territory of this shrine, at the four corners of the shrine territory, they erect this pole. And every 6 or 7 years, they renew it, you know. It erodes, it rots away with the rain and, you know, snow and everything. So they renew it. And every 7 years, I think, they have to renew one of these, one each, not all at the same time. They do it one each, but that's a big ceremony in this area, and everybody takes part in. And the highlight of this ceremony is when they cut the tree. This is chestnut tree. Not this one. Oh, this is conifer, one of the conifers, not this one. They cut the tree up in the mountain and they drag them down on the slope, and they just slide it down, actually, like a sleigh. And when they slide it down, many of the guides ride on it. You know, it's very dangerous. It's like I don't know, it's the highlight of the ceremony, but they have to ride on and hold on to it while this huge heavy thing slides down the slope. And of course, in every time, you know, some guys fall and, you know, get injured and break legs, and you know, so many troubles happen. But they do it every 7 years, even today. And this is just a post, erected post, it's heading for the heaven, you know. So it's a long tradition, I guess. It started all from Jomon period to erect the pole and point straight to the heaven. So they're all related to their religion, their thoughts, concepts, and their gods, you know. So probably that's what it is. So you don't have to have these floors, you know, 3-story floors. You don't have to have those. There's no evidence that they had these floors. Some archaeologists misunderstood it, and this must be a building or something. So he made it, but we don't need that. You know, this is it. You know, just a raised pole and structure. And also there is not quite clear in Jomon period, but there was a very strong faith in birds, especially from Yayoi period on. And because the birds are the only animal, only being that could fly into heaven. They could fly high into the sky. And they could fly far away, you know, faster than they could go far. And probably they were some, I don't know the term, but there's some being that connects two worlds, the heaven and the earth. So they go back and forth between two worlds. And you have this specific feature called torii desu ne. Torii in front, I mean, at the entrance of the shrine, even today. Many of the shrines have these, most of the shrines have this structure at the entrance. You know, 2 poles and 1 lintel, horizontal pole onto right angle pole. And torii means the place where birds are, birds sit, birds are. So the structure is supposed to be where the birds come and stay, you know, and that's the entrance of the shrine. And that's has a very specific meaning that separates the normal world and the sacred world of the shrine zone. You see, so another thing is the birds. Keyword is the birds, but they never made any figurine of the birds in Jomon period. That's very interesting too. Maybe some. I think I've seen it before, but scarcely. But I'm pretty sure they had a very special thoughts about birds too. Okay, and that's what I wanted to add to the previous lectures. All right, because I had so much comments and questions about those things too. All right, so let's continue. And all right, animal figurines. Okay, from this one. And looking at those masks, he even looks like wearing another mask right here, you know. It's kind of strange. It's multiple masks. So probably one of those wearing mask is one of those very special elements in their ceremony or something, you know. And we don't find a lot of these masks are real masks made of clay or wood, sometimes made of wood. And it has holes along the chin. So probably they made something like a beard, you know, using animal fur or something, you know, or hair, human hair, I don't know. And another thing is that sometimes, in many cases, those figurines and masks have closed eyes, you know, it's not open. And looks as if they're dead. So it may be related to some spirit and related to dead people. We don't know. And sometimes we find only ears, only nose, only mouth parts of those masks. Probably they were attached to a wooden board or something to make one mask, but sometimes the parts are separated. Right? And I'll show you other kinds of secondary tools. And this is clay plaque, dobanti, clay plaque. It's just a plaque with decorations like pottery. You know, these are close to pottery designs and with holes. So probably it could be suspended with a string or something. Suspended where in the house, or I don't think you wear it, you know, you hang there. Those things are very heavy, so I don't think they're hang there, this kind of things from your neck, but probably used in a ceremony. At least we call them ceremonial material, ceremonial tools. These are easier to understand. Handprints, footprints on a clay plaque, and they are small, very small, as you can see, very tiny things. So it's obviously the newly born baby footprints and handprints. A little bigger kids, but still babies, and has a hole perforation. So it could be suspended from the kid's neck too. And we don't really know the meaning of these, but we still do this, you know, in today's world. When the baby's born, we make footprints and handprints on the paper today for the wish that they could grow healthy without any trouble, you know. So probably the same thing. They had this concept of the babies should grow without problem. So it's really kind of easy material to imagine about their concept, their thoughts about babies, you know. And as I mentioned, they're not very good at reproducing the reality. But this one obviously is a corn type shell. It's made of clay and painted with a red lacquer. Beautifully made, but still, this is not the reality. I mean, we don't know any species of this format, species of shell of these details, you know, tiny things sticking out, and those lines, and you know, those structures in the top of the corn. This is not what we see in our world. But, still, the expression of the entire shape of the corn shell, it's very beautifully made and pretty realistic. We don't know what this is. This is not the cooking pot, obviously. It's painted, and probably a liquid container too, since they're painted with a lacquer. and could be a drinking cup too. You know, this is the only example we've ever found in Japan, so we're not sure about this one. This is obviously not the daily tool. This is a ceremonial tool, I guess. And these are another mystery. We call them mushrooms, but we don't know. It looks like shrooms, but and some people would have imagined that these could be served as a lid of a vessel, like pots, jars, you know, small mouth container. And if you make it upside down, and this is a handle, and this will be the lid. But we don't find anything of that kind of container or vessel with a small mouth, you know, but we are finding multiple of these in certain area. So we still think that these are shrooms, you know. And shrooms are so important that they have to make this kind of clay material and probably served in ceremony or something. We don't know. There's somebody pointed out that certain kind of shrooms are very special. You know, it's not just good to eat, but some kind of shrooms like drugs, you know, and gives you a very special effect when you eat it. You know, actually some of those shrooms have toxic or, you know, other elements that bother your nerve, and sometimes make you laugh, sometimes make you cry, sometimes, you know, make you intoxicated. 麻薬のようなね、効果があるものもあります。So probably these are the specific ones, and the real ones could have been used in the ceremony for special effects. And still, everything is in imagination, but you know, there are some of the artifacts that made. And how about stone ones? This is a rod. I mean, this could be called column, stone column. We used to call them stone columns, but small ones shouldn't be called columns. So now we call them rod. This is one of the biggest one ever found in Japan. It's over 2 meters. You know, it's buried, planted in the ground. So it's the entire length is 2 meters long, and very beautifully finished. And these are normal size, smaller ones, you know, like 40 centimeter, 50 centimeter. And normal size will be over 1 meter, it's big ones. And you will see remnants, fragments of those in Yuasa Museum too. And these are smaller ones, you know. Oh, this is different. And you see how beautifully they are finished, polished. You see the glow, you know, it's very well, carefully made and well polished as a finishing. And so they must have spent so much time and labor just to make one of these. And this appears from the latter half of Middle Jomon period, and a lot of them were made in late Jomon period, the same period as I've been mentioning, you know, other type of secondary tools. And the figurines, clay figurines, were a female figure, pregnant female figures. These are phallic symbols, man's symbols, and both related to the sexual purposes, and descending your lives to your descendants. And so these were very important in the time they had to survive from the decline of the environment. And actually, the number of the sites, actually number of the settlement in late Jomon period decreases rapidly compared to the middle Jomon period. And it's really obvious, you know. So, well, you can tell the environmental resources were so few in late Jomon period and on. And so they had to survive so much, and the population grew in middle Jomon period, right? And it grew like crazy, and so many people, so many villages were around and forming networks and everything. But the condition changed drastically, and that's the time they focused their lives onto this kind of secondary tools, and probably that's that meaning they had more and more ceremonies, rituals that they had to perform, and these tools were needed. And other kind of stone tools of the same time period, they never made this kind of things before, never. But a lot of strange, unusable things appear from this time. And this is what we call stone sword. It's very close to the phallic symbol, the stone rod, but this is not the round stone. This is flat, you know. It looks as if a sword or something. They didn't have sword or anything. They didn't have metal at the time. So we don't really know what this is. Probably related to those stone column or stone rods, very close function maybe. And we don't know how to call this. We call them falchion. Falchion is 青龍刀ですね。In Japanese, 青龍刀って言いますけど、it's a kind of sword. The Chinese sword. And when you read story about the pirates, you know, there are always, I don't know why, there are always Chinese guys in the group of pirates. And those Chinese guys always have this kind of sword. This is Sei Ryu To ですね。And this is falchion. So we don't know how to call this stuff in other name. Looks kind of like, oops, sorry. Wait a minute, made a mistake. This and this. Okay. So, and we don't really know. And this part looks just like a phallic symbol, and this part may be a female sexual symbol too. So they're all together in one. So probably the same purpose as a stone rod and other things for fertility symbols or fertility ceremonies. This kind of tools were used in those ceremonies, I guess. We don't know. But these are beautifully made, beautifully polished, finished. And these were found from the northern Japan, Tohoku area in Japan seaside. So some people would did say these were used for knocking the head of the salmon. you know, salmons comes back to the northern Japan very much. And when they catch the salmon, you know, they just go wild, jumping and stuff. So they just hit the head of the fish, not only salmon, but when you catch the big fish, before they go wild, you know, you hit the head and faint. You know, they go faint. And these were used, some people did say, but you don't have to use this kind of thing. You just have to have a piece of wood, and that's enough for hitting the head of the fish. And this is another type of stuff called Gyobutsu Sekki. This is even weird, more weird name. Gyobutsu is Gyobutsu means stuffs that dedicated to the emperors. And the reason why they call it emperor's tool is that they were firstly found in earlier Meiji or Taisho period, some 100 years ago, in Gifu Prefecture, central Japan area. And farmers, they found this, and these were so well made and so beautifully made, but they could not figure out what they are. So they dedicated, they gave it to the emperor of Japan at that time. And that's how it's called, Gyobutsu Sekki. And we don't know what these are at all. Could be some kind of tools, actual tools, because let's see, it's kind of this shape, and if you haft it, tying right here with the haft, then you can use it as a hammer or something to hit something, maybe fish head. I don't know, but could be used. But none of those, various types of those were found, but none of those have use mark here in here. It's not being used. It's just been polished, finished, and that's all. So it's one of those ceremonial tools, I guess. So many mysterious things appear and we don't know how to call these either. We call them crown. Doesn't look like crown either. It looks like a phallic symbol, these ones, And these look like a roof of the house. This looks like a roof, like of the pit dwelling, So some people would call it a house-shaped tool, but we don't. Oh, sorry, we don't know yet. You don't know anything about those. Probably related to phallic symbol. I mean, just like stone rods. And also, it could be also used as tools if you haft it, like if you haft it here, tie the cord around here, then you can use it as a hammer or something. But there's no indication, there's no use mark on the top, so it's not, I guess. These things, it's so hard for us to explain. So I'm sorry about it, but please forgive us. It's still a mystery. But they are all related to those specific occasion, like ceremony or ritual, I'm sure. It's not the daily use tools. It has no relation to the daily functions for surviving. So it's sure spiritual things, I guess. Also, wooden materials. Oops. And this is what we call comb. It's kind of coarse type, but made of wood, carved and painted with red lacquer. It's a beautiful one. And these are not the comb to comb your hair. You know, you can't comb your hair with this. You know, maybe afro hair. But so this obviously is a decoration comb, decorative comb. You know, it's you make hair dressing, specific form of hair dressing, and to hold the shape, you use this, you stub this comb. And this is a part of the design of the hairdressing, I'm sure. There are various type of designs of this kind of combs found from the waterlogged sites. 低地遺跡からね、見つかってますね。And oh, I mean ornaments. I'm starting to talk about the ornaments. 装飾具ですね、装飾品。And looking at those figurines, they often wear those ear plugs, earrings, and some of them may represent the hair dressings, some kind of hair dressing or hair pins, and you know those decorations that they wore. And probably they were worn by women. Looking at figurines, you know, those female figures. So, and men could wear, but probably the women wore it. If we imagine from the figurines, you know. Except for some other type of ornaments like pendants, and this is a stone-made earrings too, and these could be worn by male too. But the major thing is the female stuff, the ornaments, especially the bigger ones and heavier ones, you know, because it's not really good for activities, field activities. You know, if you're wearing big things, heavy things, you can't really move around. So probably these belong to the female. And so let's see. So some people would say the Jomon society was maternal society, 母系社会. Females were the major existence, and you know, from mother to daughter is the main stream of your life. I mean, that's the major stream of your society, and that's maternal society. And many people would mention about this maternal society in prehistoric time. You know, women, females are more important than male. Of course, they give birth to the kids. So, and I don't know, probably in the case of Jomon period. And let me go back to the ornaments. This is a special type of earrings. You have a hole in your earlobe, it's a pierce, and you extend the hole bigger and bigger, and you slide your earlobe in, and you suspend it in your lobe, you know. And these were normally made of very beautiful stones, green ones especially, not necessarily jade, but green stones were selected for this kind of material. And as you can see, this part is weak, you know, easy to break. And many of them were found in fragments, broken here. And some of these have holes perforated after the breakage. So they recycled, they tied the broken ones with a string right here, obviously. Many of those bear holes right by the breakage. So they always try to recycle it, you know. So that means it was a very special material, and they cannot make it easily. And they have to choose the material and spend a lot of time making one of these. All right, and oops. Right, okay, right. Another kind of ear ornament is the ear plug, we call plug. Now, these are made of clay and baked, of course. And it has a pulley shape. Pulley means bigger diameter in front and back, but at the middle, it's smaller, as you can see here. It's smaller at the middle. It's bigger here and bigger at the other end. You know, just like this, you know, so that it could be held in your earlobe hole, earpiece hole, and it wouldn't fall off. So it's called pulley type ear plug. This is fake, but I show you the real one. They have various sizes. They made smaller ones too. This is what we found from our site on campus. It's not very many of these. Some of these are exhibited in the Yuasa Museum too. It's very small. It's kind of broken, but can you see the paint, red paint on the surface? Red color. Kind of painting, but you see? And this is a pulley type, you know. So that it would stay in your earlobe like this. Yeah. So we can tell that as after you open the pierce right here, earlobe, they extended by putting bigger things, bigger and bigger, make it bigger and bigger until they use something like this. Oh, this is huge ones, you know. It's over 10 centimeter diameter, huge stuff. It's just like the ones you see in figurines. Dogune figurines could wear this kind of things. You know? A lot of those showing the big earplugs. And these are very delicately made. And these are made of clay, of course, but these are carved out, you know, the hollow in the middle part, and they're finely carved out, very thin and very delicate. And we don't know about this design. It's very, very delicate design, but and it has a very close feature with some of the pottery design in latest period. This is the latest one. And all painted with a red lacquer. And we are not always finding these, you know, of course. Even from our campus, vast campus, we've found maybe 2 or 3 of smaller ones, not the big one. And bigger ones haven't been found from anywhere except for a couple places, a couple sites in Tokyo and in Gunma Prefecture, northern Kanto. They found a lot of these too. And so much designs in the plugs, you know, various sizes and designs. And these are simple ones. You know? Some of things, this is the type that I showed you right now from campus. And, but others are not hollow and have designs, very simple designs like this. You know, maybe these are so small for probably a younger girls would wear these and gradually expand the hole and wear the big ones. when you get to adult, maybe. And it's really, really strange, function, custom, and but you can see it in various parts of the world. Like on Easter Island, that's one of my specialty, but they used to wear this kind of huge, huge ear plugs, pulley type ear plugs made of vertebra of shark. サメの脊椎、サメの背骨で作ったね、ear plug がありますね。And they used to extend the earlobe so long. So all the Moai, the stone statue, they show a long, long earlobe, right? So they obviously had this custom of extending your earlobe long. And it's been said that when you're not wearing the plug or ear ornament, and those long earlobe will be suspended, swinging under your ear. So, and it's a lot of nuisance. So when they're not wearing any ornaments, they hang their earlobe on the top of your ear. Do you understand? That's Easter Island story, but your earlobe is so long, it's suspending. And while you're spending your daily life, you're working, and it's kind of nuisance. So you pick it up, the earlobe, and hang it on top of your ear. That's what they said on Easter Island. I don't know about the Jomon, but probably the same condition for those people who had big, long, extended earlobes. Anyway, so there's so much, and we don't really know about these either. Whether they wore it daily, normally, or they wore it in special occasions like a ritual or ceremonies, or we don't know. But probably it's a lot of trouble wearing it all the time. You have to take it off. Like when you sleep, you can't sleep with this. And there are a lot of ornaments. We've seen this type of, I don't know how to call it in English, but in Japanese, we call them ketsujo mimikazari. Kets って言うんですね. Kets is a term in China, Chinese artifacts name. In Chinese, in early time, they made a lot of material with the jade. Their jade is not the hard kind of jade, softer jade, easy to manipulate, easy to work. And many types named. They have terms. And one of those with the round shape with one slit on one side is called kits. And so in Japan, we call them ketsujo mimikazari. Looks like ketsu. Ketsu formed ear ornament. And as you can see, these are very fragile, and these are broken, all broken, and always have those holes perforated after the breakage to tie them together so that you can use it again. And some of these have, the slit is so narrow, and we don't know how you can slide your earlobe in, and hang it. But maybe they could, these are so narrow. So maybe like something like this would be an unfinished one. They could have done more work to expand the niche. And some stuffs look like magatama, the fang shape, kiba no yona katachi desu ne. And pendants, various pendants. This may be a reproduction, recycle of this kitsu type. But there are so many other types. Depends, probably depending on the shape of the original material. See? And there are weird shape types too. And they are not necessarily always polished. This is not the polished type, but this is a chipped type, isn't it? They are chipped, finely chipped into this special shape. So there are many of those too, made with obsidian and other glassy stones and beads, various beads. So there are so many types of ornaments that they made and wore, and maybe smaller ones you could wear always in daily life. But if it comes to very big and heavy ones, it could be the sheer ceremonial material. All right, so let's have a break. And it's 4:23, so let's have 10 minutes break. Okay, any questions so far? Not yet. All right. Okay, let's have a break. Okay. Are you back? I forgot to show you another fragment that we found a couple of years ago from our site on campus. It's a broken one, but obviously it's a pulley cross section, you know, the center's depression, and has a pattern, you know, code marking with the incised lines, you know, got a design on it. It's a back. It also has a same kind of design. Though it's broken, you know, it should be a part of the pulley type ear ornaments, big ones, you know. So we found it on ICU campus too. I forgot about it. All right. All right, there's still other type of ornaments, stones, and not all of these are made of jade. Whitish ones are jade, I think. There's whitish one. The picture color is not very good, and the darker green ones. I don't really know the material, but various type of stones of pretty colors that they chose. And Magatama. It becomes really popular. This one becomes really popular in later time, like a Kofun period. You know, this became a symbol of the power. And kings and royalties, the high class people, social classification will be developed in that period, and those high class people would wear pendants of these, and one pendant may bear multiple of these, you know, 3, 4, 5 of these. And but as I mentioned before, probably the origin of this Magatama type pendant was the fang of the wolves or dogs or wolves, you know. And so well, it's natural that they became a symbol of the power in later time. You know, this was, even in the Paleolithic time, probably was a power symbol of the animal. You know, it's more closer to animism thoughts, but you know, the wolves are very powerful being and very dangerous, life-risking beings, you know. And the most powerful part of the wolves are the fang, you know, that could kill you easily, very easily. So this wolf fang was the symbol of the power, real natural, extreme power for the human beings. So probably they started to wear it in hope of, in wish of acquiring the natural power to their body too, because that means that they knew that human beings are weak. You know, they're weak people. They don't have fang, they don't have nail, sharp nail, or anything. You can't really fight with other animal, except for their tools. Except they're using their tools, and because they have intelligence. Their intelligence is the main tool, main weapon, and main arm of human beings. And that overcame everybody else as a result. But as you can see, these became the symbols, and even in the Jomon period too. This is a more refined shape, close to the later type. But these different, you know, various shapes you can see, and many of those depends on the original shape of the material. You see, They looked for this kind of shape stone, right? And they made the perforation. Those perforations, holes are perfectly round. You see all of these. And that means this perforation was made with rotating tools, ですね。切りもみですね。And they could use stone tools too, but the stone tools won't bear much, won't be good, even though you make a sharp bladed awl or perforator, 切りですね. But it will not be sharp in a minute if you're rubbing with other stone, very hard kind of stone. So in place, they must have been using a bamboo stick. Bamboo stick is softer than stone, but it's very hard too. And it would erode out. It would be shorter and shorter as you use. But you can replace it, anytime. And there are a bunch of bamboo you can get. So by replacing the bamboos, I don't know how many bamboos you have to consume, but finally you will get this beautiful round shape hole. And they could do it. They could spend so much time and energy making up this shape and polishing the surface, perforation. I don't know how many months they have to spend just to make one of these. And those two. This is a more popular shape in Jomon time than Magatama. And we call them taishu. Taishu means big treasure, big jade, big treasure, literary means. So these are jade, and this one's jade too. This is amber. 琥珀ですね。こっちは翡翠ですけど、これ琥珀ですね。half transparent. It used to be a plant resin in the dinosaur time. 恐竜のいた時代にね、植物の樹脂だったわけですね。Became something very hardened mineral-like. It is not a mineral. It is still a resin. And this may be another type of jade. I don't know about this black one. I'm not too sure, but it's a beautiful, shiny. It's not obsidian. It's not. It's a different type of stone. Maybe a kind of chert. That's also very hard kind of mineral stones. And sometimes give you a very beautiful color. So, and these pendants were quite popular in Jomon time. And these are huge, heavy ones even. This is like over close to 20 centimeter. Very big one. And you wouldn't wear it, in your daily life. It's too heavy, even though you suspend it with a string. So we share ceremonial stuffs, I think. And some of these were found from the burial pits. So grave goods. So many of these could represent the status of the person that owned this. Even though I would not say it's a classified society. 階級制ではないですけどね。There must have been a very special status for certain people, like leader, 長老とかね、elder leaders, and shamans, 巫女さんみたいな人とか、and others, very strong guy with a good ability of hunting, or something like that. Hunting is not a big thing in Jomon time, as you can see. They developed so much devices, not only bow and arrow, but they have this trap pits and other various kinds of traps, I'm sure. So anybody could catch animal. in German time. They had so much development in hunting devices. But I don't know. Sometimes, some particular people would be very talented in, survival, acquiring food, processing, or making pottery even. So those specific type of people would be distinguished from the others and may bear something like these. And these are made of antler, deer antler, 鹿の角ですね. You see? Oh, by the way, one of you is a daughter of a hunter, and her father is so kind, and he there gave me a deer horn. I'll show you now. You see, the real deer horn. It's kind of young deer, I think, male, of course. It's very sharp, pointed. You can kill yourself. I'll use it for, maybe you can make it, if you cut it here, then you can make stone tool making tools. Yeah. And also you can make various things like a tackle, fishing tackle, like fish hooks, harpoons, and other things. So I'll try to use it for various purposes. This is a deer horn. The surface is so rough, and very hard, very hard. Okay. So I'm very, very happy about this. Right. So this is a branch part of the deer horn antler, and it's been carved, deeply carved, to show some designs. And these designs are very common with pottery design too, very close patterns. And we don't know what these are either. And these are normally found from the burial. And these are placed near your hip. So we call them waist ornaments. There's no other way to call these. But I think these are also phallic symbol, male symbol, sticking out. So, and that's the reason why they had it close to your hip or waist. And there could have been certain kind of a ceremony or ritual that they could use these for some purposes. We don't really know, of course, but it's another possibility. It's very hard material. Deer antler is a very hard material, so it must have been a hard work to make engravings like these, deep engravings, holes and stuff. And latest Jumon, this is shell bracelets made of shell. And this kind of shell, one side type of shell, normally is found from the Southern Ocean, southern part, the warmer area. But lately, they discovered that this type of shell is also found from some islands close to Tokyo, the Izu archipelago. And until Miyake-jima, Mikurajima, but anyway, those a little southern part of the islands, they found these kind of shells alive. So we don't know about Jomon time, but probably they could acquire this kind of shell not too far from this area. But it's all, of course, this kind of shells are so limited, and you can't find these in number. And interestingly enough, these all of these shell bracelets were found in one pottery. These were stored in one pottery, piled up in smaller type of pottery in one shell mound. We've seen those skeletal remains, female bones with bracelets on her arm. So that's probably how they use it. Not just one bracelet, but multiple bracelets were worn by a special type of people, I guess. Okay, so much for ornaments. And there are so many other ornaments, you know, and uncountable number that's been produced towards the end of the Jomon period. So these things were so common in the time that they had no time. Actually, they had no time for other things than survival. You know, they had to find their food to survive, and they had to find their ways to survive. But still, they did this kind of time-consuming, labor-consuming, energy-consuming work for different purposes, you know, ritual or ceremonial purposes, and that's heavily related to the spiritual world. You know, that could happen. You know, like making one of these so time consuming. And but when a human being faces a crisis or you know, hard time, they have to overcome the hard time, and there will be it's easy to imagine that they had so much stress, spiritual stress, and that makes you weak, of course. But of course, at the same time, that gives you energy to overcome. And at the same time, in order to release the strain, release the stress, sometimes you will go for a different kind of work from the daily work, and sometimes unnecessary work like these, you know. And I'm sure everybody has this experience, you know, when you are in the exam time and you have to study hard, but you don't want to, then you would start reading books, you know, you would start listening to music, and you know, do the other things, and you would concentrate on it. You know, I'm sure many of you have this kind of experience, and that's it. And anybody who's in crisis, you know, and have a lot of strain in your spirit, then you would try to release it by doing something different. You would devote in, you would concentrate in doing something different, something unnecessary. And that's one of the tricks, one of the explanations that I could make for these kind of secondary tools that's prevailed from this time period, you know, the harsh environment period. Okay, well, that's not the only explanation, but I think this is one of the major big reasons they did it. All right. And totally different type of secondary tool is what's being supposed as musical instruments. 楽器ですね。And there are various types. We don't find these many in quantity. Very rare, very scarce. And probably many of those were made of organic material too, like wood. This is wood. found from a waterlogged site in Tohoku. This is clay-made, probably seal-shaped figurine. アザラシみたいなね、fins on both sides, head and butts, and has a hole. It's hollow inside. 中空ですね。And holes, 2 holes on both ends. And when you blow in the hole, you would be able to produce sound. So it's like an ocarina type, whistle type instrument, probably. We're not sure. It may be. And there are some other type of whistle, so-called whistle, which is made of stone. And sometimes you would find stone with holes, natural holes. And when you blow in, you would produce sound. It would produce sound. So anything that has a hollow body with a hole on one side or two would produce sound. So anything could be a sort of a sound producing tool. You know, it doesn't have to be musical, but you can make sound. And you can use it as a whistle. So we don't really know if these were musical stuffs or not, but you can use it for music. And other type of stuffs. This is a clay ball and hollow inside, and this is X-ray image of this material, and it's hollow inside, and it has several pieces of stones or clay fragments. So when you shake it, it produces sound. It's a shaker. Obviously, it's designed to make sound. And so this could be a shaker. For what reason, we don't know. And this one, the wooden plaque, it's about a foot long and has a 2 projection on one end. And the other end is lost, it's broken here, but the other type would have hole, 1 or 2 or sometimes 4 tiny holes. So we would assume that these were stringed instruments, you know, strings here and here, and would be played, performed by plucking the strings. So we call them hop. There are various types, and this one's huge. This is like almost 1 meter long, very big one, found from the bottom of the Biwa Lake, Biwako desu ne, the largest lake in Japan. And there are various sites along the lake, Biwa Lake, from Paleolithic to Jomon in later time. And these were, you see this stepped formation, this stepped form is similar to what we saw. You see those steps. So should have any relation. This is found from Tohoku, northern Japan area. And this one's from the middle part. So they must have had some relation. They must have shared information about those material. And carvings, and painted red and black. Must have been beautiful one. You get 4 holes, tiny holes perforated on one end, and 2 projections sticking out. That's the same fashion as the one we saw before. Another one from, this is northern area from Korekawa side in Aomori. 2 projections, no hole in this case, but probably the strings were tied right here. Got 1 hole here though. Another type, 2 projection, 2 projection. So they all keep the same shape in general. And we call them hop, probably the stringed instruments. But we don't know. If it was, probably that's one of the earliest stringed instruments in the world, I guess. we assume that the origin of the stringed instruments is the bow. Yumi desu ne. When you use the bow and arrow and shoot something, then the string will be pulled hard and released. And when it's released, it produces sound, actually. Not the sharp sound, but it does produce some kind of vibration, and you can hear it. So that should be the origin of the stringed instruments. But this one's very sophisticated compared to the bow itself. But we don't know if these were really the stringed instruments or not. I believe it, but even if you put strings on and pluck it, it wouldn't produce much sound, as you can imagine. This is a short one, about a foot long or shorter, and just a plaque, very thin wood plaque. So if you just pluck it, the string, you wouldn't hear it. Let me try. I made it. The reproduction, simplified one. So very thin plaque with a string on and two projections. So I put two strings on it. And on one end, there's one hole I made so that I could fix the string, end of the string right here in the back. And in order to produce sound, you have to raise the string higher. If you don't apply anything, it just goes along the plaque and it doesn't vibrate, So you have to raise it like this. I'm using a bamboo piece like this, and like this. Any kind of stringed instruments have this system. So it's raised. And I used to use plant fiber for the string, and doesn't produce any sound at all. So I decided to select a harder material, and I was thinking about other choice, and I found out that they're still selling those gut skin of the surface skin of the gut of animal, 腸ですね、腸の皮. And they're selling those salted ones for making sausages, your own sausage making. So I found it, so I bought it, and I washed them and twined those fine, very thin skin, twined and made the strings like this, very fine strings, as you can see. And let me try play it. German musician. Hear the sound. Can you hear it? Maybe I can hear it a little bit, but not you, not the people around. So it doesn't make any sense to call it a musical instrument. If you're playing for your own amusement, that's okay. But if it's a ceremonial things, and there was a big one, a huge one, and beautifully made, painted even. So probably they were used in ceremony also by producing sounds. But they don't produce much sound. And I thought, it's really weird that they all have this pointed end. It doesn't have to be pointed. It has to be, it could be just a parallel, long rectangle board, but they're always pointed. And this is a point, actually. So this is the trick. And I thought that it could be used like this. Can you hear it? I don't know through this microphone and the internet system. I don't know how much you can hear, but it amplifies the vibration, amplifies the volume of the sound with using your mouth. And there are a certain kind of instruments that uses your mouth cavity as that for that function. You know, some of the northern tribes I knew in Japan, they have this mukuri. It's an instrument made of bamboo, and it makes vibrates bamboo and into your mouth and amplifies the vibration and produces sound. And there are so many types of the same kind of instruments all over in the Eurasian continent too. Sometimes even the material is metal, and like in India too, various places would have this same type of instruments in Southeastern Asia, into China. They all have this same principle of instruments. So, but stringed one is kind of rare, but they all also have exactly the same type of instruments in Hawaii. You know, Hawaii is not very early country. You know, they have very short history compared to the other places like Japan, but still they have exactly the same type of musical instruments called ukeke, with the 2 strings, 2 projections, plaque with the 2 strings and stuff. And they always use it like this with the help of your mouth. So probably this is it. And still you won't hear too much. It doesn't produce large volume sound, but you know, compared to just simple plucking, you know, volume is different. So this is my hypothesis. Like, oh yeah, the ones still known in the continent is called Jew's harp. With this Jew's harp type of instruments, it was, I think, and so this was the system, and probably used in a very small community services, ceremonies at night with no other sound, in silence, so you could hear. You know, that's my imagination, but still, that's possible. And it's interesting to see this kind of instruments. The same material is found from central Japan and northern Japan too, and probably there are more stuffs being used in wider area if you can find it from the more waterlogged sites. And I hope they should find more of these in the future. All right, so that's one kind of musical instruments, I suppose. And there are something called clay bell. It's made of clay and hollow inside. And these are open on the bottom. So you would suspend some piece of stone or clay fragment inside and make sound by shaking it. And some of them are like shakers, closed type. So we don't really know. This is kind of limited, rare type that we don't really always see. This is some of the students, I see students made it. The archaeology club made it. This is like today's bell made of clay. Shaker. Bell. Very simple sound, but beautiful. And we don't find this in Jomon period. We find it in Yayoi period. And this originates in China. In China, it's called Ken. Well, not the pronunciation is different. It's Japanese way of reading the character, but in Japan we call Ken, To Ken, clay Ken, clay whistle, and has holes, 4 holes, sometimes in the back too, and produces notes as you blow into the hole on the top. So I made it with clay. See, Ocarina. So they still have another explanation about this Yayoi Ken, Yayoi whistle. They say it's the reproduction of a coconut shell, but I don't think so. It's been perforated, just the size of your finger. So they must be the musical instruments, of course, and they were introduced to Japan in Yayoi period from the continent. I'm sorry, but they didn't have this in Jomon time. I applied code marking too, but this is a fake. All right. Also, you've seen this before, this perforated fringe type of pottery. And I made an explanation of their function as brewer, liquor maker vessel. But there are other people who would insist that these were used as drum with the animal skin on top. And I think I explained about it before. And the skin is fixed with those holes, with the plugs punched into the holes. And there are ethnographical examples of a clay drum. The body is made of clay, baked clay, and the skin applied on top. And many examples, like in India, there are so many clay drums. So some people would believe that these were drums. And this guy he's a musician, actually. He's a performer of this ancient sound, ancient music. And he put out CDs, and he does all the performance and lives and concerts using these kind of drums and hitting stones, various sizes of stones to produce notes. And this is a very weird kind of guy, but Tsuchitori-san ですね。Tsuchitori Toshiyuki って言うんですけどね、his name. And as I think I mentioned it before, I don't know, I forgot, but there are some cases that some of those artifacts with the perforation holes here would bear red pigment, like lacquer. Many of these were painted red and black with a lacquer. So obviously they were not the cooking pot, but sometimes those pigments went into the hole. And when we find the artifacts, still the paints are remaining inside the hole. And that means if you use it like this, punch the plug in, and you twist it and push in, and then the pigments would come out. you know. And if you change the skin and do it again, you know, in time, the paints inside the hole would come off. But since we found some examples that still paints are still remaining inside the hole, probably this is not the function, and probably they were the brewing vessel. I believe so, but we don't know. We still don't know the answer of it. You know, what do you think? So anyway, that's about it about the story about the secondary tools. And not all of these, but many of these were produced in the latter half of Jomon period, that's for sure. And as I already explained, these were the result of the environmental change, I guess. So you would do that, you know, especially when you're having a hard time. And of course, when you're having a hard time, you would produce things, you would create new things too. That's the time your brain works a lot. The maximum function of your brain would be dragged out when in a harsh environment, and when you have so much strain and stress. And the time when cultural developments, very outstanding cultural development takes place, probably is always the kind of environmental, not only environmental, but when you're in hard situation, you have to come over. So that's one thing we have to remember about the human beings that happens. And when, well, look at us today, we're fed up, you know, you don't have to worry about tomorrow. You have so much to eat. You make leftover, you know, you're fed up. So you're not creating anything. You're not thinking, you're not observing anything, just living like animal today. Many people are like that today. But it doesn't mean that they lost their ability. We all have the same ability as a Homo sapiens. So when we get into a big trouble, then we will work again, start working again, and create excellent things again, I think. That's the system, I guess. All right. Oh, let's see. What time is it? A little more. Okay, so much for the Jomon period culture. And to wrap it up, you know, after the glacial period is over and the Paleolithic culture is over because of this big change of the environment, starting from the rising up of the temperature that changed the environment, fauna and flora, and everything changed. And especially for human beings, the food resources expanded from that time, especially the plant resources like nuts with the broad leaves and tubers, なんだ、根茎類ですね、芋とかですね、like taro, yam type of tubers, and other food resources that, and also the marine resources, ocean resources could have been increased with the rise of the temperature. That activated the current and everything, you know, and raised the water temperature too. So, and you could get more shellfish and stuff like that. So, and people would go for it. They did go for it, and they changed their diet system totally. And naturally, if they depend largely on those plant resources, trees wouldn't move around, walk around. So you could stay in a certain place and make settlements, build a solid house, and started the sedentary system of life. 定住が始まったんですね。 And that was a big thing, because you eventually you would be able to change so much tool kit, like stone tool. The big thing was the pottery, appearance of the pottery, as a cooking pot, and also processing pot too. By boiling, you could remove the harshness of certain kind of plant resources, or some kind of hard things to eat, like root, several kind of roots of the plants will be boiled for a certain time and be softened so that you can eat. You see, and you have so much more of food resources, but Jomon people was the kind of people who did not satisfied with that environmental change. And they went even forward by exploiting the environment. 開拓したですね. And so that looks like they're very positive, arrogant people, but they were not. They were still survivor. They were totally dependent upon the natural resources, and nature is not reliable, you see. So they had to expand their choice of food resources. So that's the reason why they had to exploit the environment. They looked for whatever that they could eat. And by expanding the choice, they could survive. They raised more possibility of survival. And that was the story. And as a result, they had so much development in culture and population. They made so much more villages, settlements, and they had this heavy communication to each other. And so they could trade things, they could trade local goods like obsidian, jade, whatever that is. And from the coastal area, you would trade salted, dried fish, dried shellfish, things like that. So the trade exchange system was so vital towards the middle of the Jomon period. So as I mentioned before, this sedentary system, Teiju sedentary system, and resource exploitation, Shigen Kaihatsu, and the trade exchange was the base of their Jomon economy system, I would call. And but still, that kind of very refined system had a limit, because they were still hunter and gatherers, and they could not produce enough food, and they had to totally depend upon the nature. And what happened was the declination of the temperature. The maximum temperature time was already passed in the early Jomon period, somewhere 7,000, 8,000 years ago. And the temperature started to decline, come down, and that resulted in natural environments too, and see what happened. So many people died out because of that. And at the same time, from the latter half of the Jomon period, several volcanoes became activated, especially the Mount Fuji was activated and gave a lot of eruption. 噴火したんですね. And the final eruption towards the end of it's not the final, but it was a big eruption, big long eruption towards the end of the Jomon period that created the present shape of the Mount Fuji. So most of the Jomon people never saw this beautiful slope of the Mount Fuji. Anyway, and those volcanic activities also gave damage to the environment, as I explained before. The fauna and flora declined rapidly, I think. And many settlements made upon the terrace like ICU campus is sitting on the Middle Jomon period settlements. It's right above the terrace. But we don't find any sites in ICU campus of the late Jomon period and later. None of the latest Jomon period we have found. And that means they moved out from here. And where did they go? One choice is down the hill, down the slope. They were living on the top of the bluff, but there are some late Jomon sites below the bluff. And that means they were trying to avoid the north wind of the winter. It must have been very harsh. If you're living on top of the hill, you would get it directly, the north wind. But as you go down the hill bluff line, 崖がですね、function as a screen, wind screen. And fortunately, this bluff line along the ICU side is facing south. So you get more sunlight, sun heat, but the wind, you know. So probably that's one of the choice. That's one of their strategies to avoid the north wind. And so they went down the hill and made smaller settlements down there. But that would also disappear in time, in very short time. And some of them moved down to coastal area by the ocean. And they produced a lot of shell mounds, kaizuka desu ne. Because even though the plants and animal resources were declining, they still have this water, marine resources, fish and shellfish and others. So that was also one of their strategies to survive the hard time. And that's the reason why we find a lot of shell mounds along the coastal area of this time period, particular time period, not the early ones, not later ones. And anyway, but so they made so much ceremonies, they made so much strategies to overcome the hard time, making second rituals, prayed for gods, I don't know, you know, performing a lot of rituals and ceremonies, but you know, God of nature wouldn't listen to you. They didn't actually. So they went into the disaster. And one of the characteristics of Jomon culture is the equality, they say. And they were so rich in environment, and so they wouldn't fight over the resources. They didn't have to, or they should cooperate more than fighting to each other. That's a lot better for themselves. They knew it. They had a wisdom for that. And so they were quite equal, and they didn't have classified systems, classified society. And we can't see any concentration of power. We don't see any concentration of treasures and, you know, properties. So it was pretty equal society, we suppose. And one of the things which is outstanding in Jomon culture is not only pottery designs, but the hunter and gatherers, they were hunting and gathering economy sustained for a long, long time. If you look at the other part of the world, you wouldn't see it. Like until, well, 4,000 or 5,000 years before, they all went to agriculture economy. They gave up hunting and gathering. And agriculture economy is a lot more stable, you know, a lot better strategy for survival. So they rushed to it because they all knew that nature is not dependent. You know, you can't trust nature. So they started controlling the nature by the device of agriculture. But Jomon people did not until quite late, until Yayoi period, which is several thousand years later than other culture of the world. You know, so they were late comers. And the reason why is that it's obvious that they had this environment, rich environment. You know, it was so rich, they didn't have to move to agriculture. They could survive enough, and they could thrive even. You know, the prosperity you see in the middle Jomon period is proving that. And I might have said it before, but Japan is so rich in natural environment, not only the resources, and so much diversity in plant and animal and insect and those living things, but also we have so much ocean resources, and the water conditions good. We can drink water directly from the river, even today, if you go up in the mountain area. So clear water supplies enough, and the climate, temperature, humidity is really balanced. You have 4 seasons, spring to winter, but they're clearly different. But the summer is not too hot compared to tropic area. Winter is not too cold compared to the Arctic area. You see, so it's moderate, it's gentle. The climate is really gentle, but still you have clear 4 seasons and clear change of resources too. So that means your natural environment is so rich. You know, even today, whenever I go out of Japan and come back, fly back, then I'm amazed when I ride on a train or bus from the airport, Narita airport, back into Tokyo area. I pass the countryside of Chiba prefecture, and so beautiful, so green, and you know, so much variety of plants and rice paddy, and you know, so much water. It's beautiful, just beautiful. And I was amazed by the rich environment, even today. It must have been a lot more richer in Jomon time, I guess. So the extraordinary Jomon culture it's not that Jomon people were excellent or anything compared to the others. It was just that they had that environment by chance, you know, and they were the people who went forward developing their own culture. But everything was thanks to this beautiful environment, rich environment at the time. And as you can see, as soon as the environment started to change, started to decay, you know, everything changed. And I'm going to talk about it, the drastic change of the culture now. And okay, let's have another 10 minutes break before I start talking about Yayoi period. Any question? Okay. All right, let's have a break. All right. So we wrapped up the Jomon culture, and now into the next one, Yayoi cultures, Yayoi period. And towards the end of the Jomon period, as I explained right now, they had so much hard time. They had to survive, and they could not survive. Many died out, I think. The number of the sites, number of settlements decreased like crazy. You know, they were like almost dying out. And, you know, the effort of surviving methods and strategies, they didn't work at all. And that was the time, the very time that some people came into Japanese archipelago from the continent. And in the continent, like China at that time, towards the end of Jomon period, what was happening down there, you know? There were already empires, countries and empires, big countries, reigned by emperors. And they were always fighting to each other. They were always under warfare, trying to expand their territory, their power, their economy, and everything. You know, they were always fighting each other. And that's fighting history of the China for a long, long time. Already started at that time. And their economy was, of course, agriculture. They were growing grains like rice and wheat and kodian. It's a kind of grain in the northern part of. And of course, they were fighting all the time in the warfare all the time. And it's so dangerous to live in there for most of the normal people. Most of the normal people at the time were farmers, of course. And farmers wouldn't be able to farm their land, you know, because they were doing battle, warfare in their farmland. And they're risking their lives too, you know, and they could be taken as soldiers. So many of them fled, I think. I'm sure they fled. 逃げたね. And to south and north and spread all over by carrying those seeds of their grains, you know, like rice and others. And some of them with the rice came down all the way down through Korean Peninsula and into the northern Kyushu area. It's Japanese archipelago, and brought in the crops and agricultural methods and other cultures as well. There is a lot of opinions nowadays that's going against that, saying that they would not be able to grow rice in the northern part. If you're going down the Korean Peninsula, you have to go up north first and down the peninsula, right? And in the northern part, it's too cold to grow rice. And so they were not the people who came down that route. That's what they say, but I don't believe that, because if they are not stupid, you know, their farmers are not stupid. If they go up there in the north, and if it's too cold, they would not stay there and pass the area and go down the peninsula quickly. So, and anyway, you know, some people eventually came down and into Japanese archipelago with the rice and cultivation methods. And there, Jomon people right there were at the last. They didn't know what to do to survive. They were almost dying out. And they saw this. They met with these people with rice and cultivation, agriculture, you know. And what would they do? They jumped to the new culture, of course, to survive. There's no other way. There's no other choice. And we used to say that the drastic change of the culture from Jomon to Yayoi. Sorry, made a mistake. From Jomon to Yayoi, and that means they were the continent people came in and invaded Japanese archipelago where Jomon people were living, and chased around, ostracized the Jomon people out or killed them out, and dominated the islands. And that was a theory. That used to be a theory. But let me see. Let me see the other picture right here. All right. And these are the reproduction of the faces from the skeletal remain, the skulls. You know, face constructions totally different. These are Jomon people, and these are continental people who came into Japan from that time period. You know, it's obvious differences. And so they used to say that these people invaded over Jomon people and ostracized, kicked them out or killed them out. But it's not, it was not. As archaeological investigation proceeded, and in the earlier Yayoi period sites, especially the burial sites, they were finding a lot of skeletal remains, bones, which are not this type, but this type, you know. So the early Yayoi culture people, the people who followed the early continental Yayoi culture was not the continental people, but Jomon people. And that means, obviously, they abandoned their own culture of Jomon, their tradition of Jomon, long, you know, very special tradition of Jomon culture, and jumped to the continental culture. And it seems as, you know, the invasions theory seems right because they changed the total cultural content to the new one. Even the tools, even stone tools, potteries, everything changed from this time. And that was a story, you know. Jomon people didn't have any mind of following their tradition anymore, because however they prayed, however they carried out ceremonies and rituals and all those, you know, spending a lot of time and efforts, nothing becomes better. Nothing became better. So they decided to abandon everything and jump to the new one, which looks a lot better. And it was a lot better because they could survive by introducing the agriculture economy, you see. So that's what happened at the time. And you see, they were still pit dwellers, and they formed the village just like Jomon people. But there are obvious difference from Jomon settlement, which is this, the moat, hori desu ne, surrounding, the ditch surrounding the exterior of the settlement. That never happened in Jomon period. And this is the protection ditch, protection moat. And that represents the very unstable social condition. It's very dangerous. You may be attacked by somebody else. You have to be watching, you have to be aware of that condition. And that never happened in Jomon time. You see, they were equal, peaceful people in general. Of course, they could have a small level, small size of fighting or problems, but not in the big warfare type trouble. And you see, once they were, Jomon people were relieved by adopting the new culture and agriculture, and started to produce rice and other grain like millet, wheat, not wheat, but millet and other grains, various grains. And it was good, you know, they could survive, they were relieved. But for a short time it was, because so they started to expand their population, they could survive so. And the villages increased in number. And now, since you are farming the land, you're under agricultural economy, what you need is a land, vast land, and water source. You have to use a lot of water for farming, right? And we get a lot of water in Japan, you know, the river water. But as the number of the settlement increased, number of the population increased, then they became short of land, short of water. So they started to fight over the land and water. Not only that, but the crops that they get, those grains like rice, would be their property, because rice is a good thing. You can store it for years. You may get, the taste may get worse, but you can still eat it. You can store it for years, you know. And if you have enough rice storage, then you would not have to worry about the, you know, famine. You don't have to worry about the future, the close future. You see, so that's their property, and that didn't happen in Jomon time. You know, it's more stable property. Grains are, and but depends on the villages, depend on the groups. The amount of the crops must have been different. You know, some villages would get a lot, and some people would not. And those differentiation and the result, I mean, the property amount is different, depends on the group. And that's also a source of fight. You know, those would not have much would try to steal or get others' properties. You know? So land, water, and crops, over those properties, they started to fight. Maybe started off from the minor type of fight, not killing each other. That increased rapidly. And that grew bigger and bigger and became warfare. And that was the first time in Japanese history that they started warfare. You know, warfare means a big group trying to kill each other, kill out each other, you know. And that never happened before. And this is the evidence. You always have to protect your village from the attack. You always have to be ready for it. You see? And most of the entire Yayoi village has this moat. Sometimes it's bigger and deeper, and sometimes it's double and tripled. You know, how fearful the society was. You can tell from those evidences. And in some cases, in the western part of Japan, there are settlements made on top of the hill. It's kind of hard to see these pictures, but this is a hill, small hill. And this is the top part, and there's a sites around here, Yayoi period sites. And they would enclose it with a wall, and they live in there. And you can't make any farmland, any rice paddy up there. So it's always down there, closer to the water source, close to the river. So in the morning, they would come out and go down the hill and work there for a whole day. And at night, they would go up and enclose their village and spend a night. And this is like a fort. 砦みたいなね、もんですね。It's the fort format of the settlement. And there are many cases of this hilltop settlement in Western Japan. Western Japan is more harsh in this warfare because the Yayoi culture started out from the west, northern Kyushu, and spread out to the east. Didn't take too much time, but still the western half of Japan was so much developed as a Yayoi culture. And they had so much strives and warfare fights and things more in western half compared to the eastern half. And sometimes you have special fireplace in their settlements that could have been used as a sign, smoke sign spot. Noroshi desu ne. Noroshi, like Indians, you communicate with other villages, remote villages, with smoke patterns, and that's what's been said. So, and you have so much more evidences of warfare. Look at this. This is a vertebra of human beings, and there's a tip of the stone dagger. 石の剣ですね。剣の先が折れて背中に刺さってる。This is a picture of it, So obviously this guy was killed by this. And those injuries, so much injured skeletal remains found from Yayoi period burials. And sometimes arrowheads in your bones, and some guys would have a head, skull broken, hit by somebody. And sometimes lost head, headless skeletal remains buried, And this is one type of burial in the Western Japan. And it's a pot burial, ja burial. It's not a ja, it's a pot actually. Two big pot like this, combined together, 1 and 2, and bodies enclosed inside. And many of these bear those fighting marks. It's been killed, And you don't see that very much in Jomon burial. Even though you see the skeletal remain, you don't have so much trouble like marks. And this is one of the job burial with a guy, male, with a lot of bracelets on his arm, right arm here. And you have, this is a bronze material, bronze arm actually, called ka, isn't it? Ka in Japanese reading, but it's a Chinese stuff. Let me see. It's a weapon. Like this. It's a little bit exaggerated. It's kind of bent a little bit. It's a dagger-like thing. And you have a hole here. And you put a haft right here, long haft. And stabilize with a peg right here. And it's called, this is the Chinese character for this weapon called ka desu ne. In Japanese, ka. I don't know how to read it in Chinese. If you know, let me know. But it's called ka in Japanese. And this is a particular weapon that used by the artilleries, hohei desu ne, the lowest rank soldiers that always have to walk holding this on his shoulder. And it could be used as a dagger or a spear or whatever. But the reason why it has this angle from the shaft is that it's been used for dragging the higher rank soldiers or higher rank whoever that is on horse. You will drag him down with using this, this, just stab it into him and drag him down from the horse. And that's why they have this kind of special shape. And normally the real weapon, of course, made of metal like bronze, and later made of iron. And normal real weapon in China is about this size, maybe 1 foot long. That's a regular size. It's not a big thing, but as you saw, this is huge compared to his body. This is a double size of the real one. And you can't really swing these big things, big heavy things as weapons. So it's obvious that it's not the real weapon. And those big things made of metal. Metal was firstly introduced in Yayoi period. Firstly bronze and later iron. But it was very rare material at first. And so it was belonging of the power, belonging of the leaders. And this is obviously one of the treasures that he had. You know, it's not the real weapon, but it's a symbol of his power. To show his power, he owned, he let the people made this huge weapon. And it was buried with him when he died. And this is quite different from Jomon period burial. You see, not only pots, but well, they had bracelets in some very few cases, but nothing like this. This is obviously a property, a personal property of this guy, probably a leader of a group. And that could indicate the starting of the classification, social classification. Kaikyusei desu ne. So the leader would own his own property, which nobody else can have, nobody else can share. So a leader would have more power and accumulate his property. And that all started from Yayoi period. And let's see. Look at the material culture. The pottery of Yayoi look like this. Firstly, you would realize the shape. Those jaw shape with a narrow neck didn't appear much in Jomon time. And this particular shape represents the storage vessels. And in order to store something inside, then you would have a narrow neck. You would make a neck narrow so that dust and other things would not come in to protect the things inside. So ja is a storage vessels. And what would they store in Yayoi period? Grains, crops, of course. They needed to store rice and other grains in this ja type of pottery, which Jomon people never had. Well, they had a little bit, but was not popular at all. This is the type of the pottery they used in Jomon time. It's almost the same shape, but a few decorations. It's so simple, very flat on the surface. A little notches, a little lines may indicate the remnant of a Jomon culture, but it's totally different. There's no design. It's just a wavy line, like the very earliest incipient Jomon people would make, you know, the simple design. And those would not have much design either. A little bit of Jomon, maybe, or scraped marks, but it's so modest. And obviously they didn't care about those decorations on the pottery. So the pottery design and decoration is different from Jomon period. The function is different. But they started to, no, not started, Jomon people did also, but they painted the pottery surface in red a lot. You know, these are not cooking pots, so they could paint. And this one too. And so this is a cooking pot, obviously, although it's kind of darker on the bottom and lighter on top. But these shape of pots were used for cooking rice at the beginning, very beginning. So they were boiling rice to cook, just like what we do today in the pot. And comparing the jars, these are very sophisticated jars, and there are most of the jars are very simple, but these bear more decoration, and depends on the area. The southern Kyushu, northern Kyushu, Fukuoka area, It's a beautiful pot, beautifully made. And they didn't have the turntable even in Yayoi period. ろくろがなかったんですね。They were all made, handmade, totally handmade. So they had so much elaborate technique of making those pots. And of course, the latest Jomon people had beautiful technique of making pots. So it's kind of natural. But fewer decoration, just lines and paints. In Osaka, Western Japan, maybe a little bit of dots and lines, very fine, shallow lines, and nothing else. In Aichi, central Japan, southern area, a little different form and paints, but minimum decoration. And in Tokyo area, this is a very delicate one, you know. It has the same kind of application, clay application here. And you see very fine, minute decoration with zigzag line, but you still can see jomon, code markings, very finely marked code marking. And it's kind of very delicate one, very fine. They're using very fine chords. And this represents the tradition, long tradition of Jomon culture. They still maintained it in Tokyo area. You see, as I mentioned, western part of Japan, Yayoi culture developed so fast. But in the eastern half, it was not so much. And we find a lot of Yayoi settlements in Tokyo area, but they're small, and the ditches around the settlement is very narrow and shallow. And well, we always say that, oh, we can't defend with this level of the ditch, moat. It's not even moat, it's just a ditch. And everybody will just jump and come over. So it's just a format, you know, the cultural format that you're supposed to make ditch around the settlements. And that was passed down from the West. But in the East, the warfare wasn't too bad, you know. They weren't really fighting each other. They just follow the format. And look at those portraits. You still stick to Jomon tradition a little bit, you know, even though the entire form and the design and technology is a Yayoi. It's very interesting to see that kind of a remnant of a Jomon tradition. And also there are various types of clay material vessels, not only potteries, and there are pedestaled plate-like thing, you know, deep plate, and cups with a handle, and pitcher with a handle. It's a kind of spout right here, so you can pour the liquid out. You see, and so much variety of the pottery were made in this period, but mainly in the Western half. These don't appear in the Eastern half either. You know, they had this minimum influence from the West. And also, you have to have a special landscape in order to make the rice paddy, you know, water kind of rice. And you have to have a lowland, vast, flat lowland close to, by the river water source. But like in Tokyo area, like ICU area, we don't find that formation, geological formation, very much. So that's one of the reasons why we don't find any Yayoi settlements around here near the campus. We don't have any remnant of Yayoi culture around here. It just stops from Jomon period. And if you go down to the downstream of the river, then you will start to find Yayoi settlements where they have more wider space of the lowland and they could grow rice. And in the above the terrace, the area above the terrace, they still have some Yayoi settlements in Tokyo area, but they don't have any of the lowland. They have a deep valley. They have rivers, of course, water source, but no lowland at all. And what happened is probably that they did not make water type rice. They didn't make rice paddy. They couldn't make rice paddy. But instead, they probably made other kind of grains like millet. awa とか冷えとかね、雑穀がありますね。米じゃないけどね。Other than rice, millet and other type of minute grains. And that could be grown in a dry field. 畑でね、できるんですね。And there are special kinds of rice that's being grown in the dry field also. So probably that's why that's what they made. That's what they grown in that high plateau type of settlements where they could not find any lowland. So that's another type of economy, and that's the system. That's their system that they adapted to in different kind of landscapes. Anyway, and in Tokyo area and eastern half, you don't have very much of variety in various cultural elements compared to the West. And this is called reaping knives. So mainly stone tools. Some of them are made of shell, but major material is a stone. And it's being called knives, but the blade is not sharp at all. It's rounded blade. You can't cut anything with this. And always have 2 or more holes, so that they would use strings through these holes and put your finger, probably middle finger, through that ring and hold this tight and cut the top of the rice. Let me show you. Let's see. Here you go. This is rice growing. It's ripe, so it goes down. It hangs heavy like this. And we today cut it at the foot of the straw, the straw. But at that time in the Yayoi period, they never cut it at the bottom. But right here, they picked only the rice using, I don't have the reproduction of Yayoi stuff, but this supposedly, this is a knife, and you have it, hold it in your hand, and you hold the grain right here with a thumb and cut it like this. It's not even cutting, it's just breaking, So that was a system. And we find a lot of those in the western part of Japan, not very much in eastern parts. So I'm sure they were growing different things in the eastern half. Of course, they were growing rice too, but not as much as western half. And so on the blade, you may not be able to see it here, but you always find some glow, some shiny surface on the blade. So obviously they were used for cutting the rice straw, because the straw includes a lot of silica, which is a particle of mineral close to glass. So by rubbing the blade always to the straw so many times, it bears a glow very shiny blade. So obviously they were used for that purpose. Okay, all right. And let's see. And there are always farming tools. And in the beginning, of course, the farming tools were made of wood, hoes, various type of hoes. And these eburi is a kind of tool to make the flat surface of the rice paddy. You tie 2 ropes on both ends and drag it on the surface. So this end would flatten the surface of the mud of the rice paddy. And various other type of tools made of wood were used. And they never had this kind of tools in the previous Jomon time, of course. So these are obviously agricultural tools. And stone tools. They still use stone tools in Yayoi period until they introduced the metal. And arrowheads, of course, these are Jomon arrowheads that you've been looking at. And these are the Yayoi type of arrowheads. And you notice the difference, obviously. They're bigger and heavier. The reason why is that Yayoi arrowheads were not designed for hunting, while these were designed for deer and boar, but these were designed for hunting human. These are weapons, for warfare. So that's why it's bigger and heavier. You have to kill them, kill the enemy. And that's the obvious change in material culture, of course. And metal was introduced in the meantime, and they used to have this dagger. It's beautifully made daggers of the stone, and it has a bark handle, bark rolled handle right here. But soon after, they introduced this bronze type of dagger. This is a Chinese type or Korean type dagger. And molded, they were made molten. Bronze is molten and molded in a stone mold. So they could produce many of these of the same size, same shape. And that's the beginning of the mass production in Yayoi period. They never had this mass production in Jomon time. And they could develop this technique of mass production by introducing this kind of things. And this is a spear point, huge spear point, and the bottom is hollow, so you can stick the handle in. And these are also bronze. And soon after, the iron came in. Bronze is very easy to make. I mean, you can melt the ingredients in lower temperature compared to iron. And you can mold it easily if you have a certain kind of stone. And you can have a cast. You can make a cast and then mold it so easily. But iron is a little harder to work with. You have to have a very high temperature to melt the iron, and iron is very hard, and you can't really cast it. You can't really mold it with a cast. So you have to pound it. 鍛造で叩いてね作る。鍛冶屋さんですね。It's like a smith, iron smith. You use a hammer, pound it, and refine it. As you pound the iron, when it's hot, the other elements in the natural iron would go out, fly out with a spark. So it becomes very hard and pure iron. And that kind of technology is a lot more complicated and very hard to do compared to the bronze work. But soon after, iron technology came in, because iron is harder and lasts very long compared to bronze, and becomes sharp when you polish it. So it's a really good, a lot better material for farming tools and weapons as well. So they always, I mean, they run to the iron soon after. And because of the introduction of those metal weapons, especially, I mean, metal tools, the efficiency of the cultivation, the agriculture was raised, you know, it's a lot better than wood tools. The metal tools were a lot better, durable, and, you know, so much, they gained so much efficiency, as well as weapon. The fight, the warfare was more developed. I mean, not developed, but they could fight in more efficiency. They could kill more people with the same weapon if it's made of iron, you see. And that accelerated the warfare, I think, and the fight over the communities were so frequent, I guess. And you will find a lot of evidences of warfare from Yayoi period sites. We have already seen some of those, but okay. And so that's what happened in Yayoi period. And oh, it's about time, so I should stop, and I'll continue explaining about the rest of the Yayoi culture next time. And I will have more time, spare time next week. So I may do the explanation about the field work, the excavation in archaeology. You know, this class is supposed to include the field work, and you're supposed to go out to the field and excavate by yourself. But too bad you can't do that this term. So at least I should explain about the field work and other work afterwards. After the excavation, you have to do all sorts of processing of the artifacts or recordings of the features and stuff until you make up one report, site report. So I think I will talk about that too. All right. So good enough for today.